Hey guys, Shalana here. Welcome to the Bingezone. On today's episode, we're talking about Watchmen episode 6. And there's a lot to unpack in this episode because this episode essentially took the Watchmen mythology and flipped it on its head. And there's a lot to unpack. And this episode is actually the most powerful episode of the season just because of the way it showed us American history, fiction or not, just the fact that we went through the times and we got to experience American history from a different perspective, a perspective of a law-abiding citizen, if you will, a black guy who wants to do the right thing and follow the American dream and is smashed at every turn. So let's dive into the episode. The episode picks up right after Angela takes the nostalgia pills from her grandfather, and now she's seeing his memories and she's going in and out between what's real and what isn't, and she gets to relive his past. And we learn about the mythology of the Watchmen universe, and most importantly, we learn about the Hooded Justice. Hooded Justice is the original superhero of the Watchmen universe, and even if you read the original comics, not much is known about him. I mean, a few things are implied, but nothing concrete, like for the fact that he's potentially gay was heavily implied in the comics, but it was never confirmed, and the show kind of plays with that a little bit because you've been seeing throughout the season that they've been showing this TV show called American Heroes, which is essentially a documentary type, not documentary, more like a, what do you call it? Not a documentary, more like a biopic of the Minutemen and the superhero team and how they were founded. And in this episode, it starts off with them implying heavily that Hooded Justice is gay and he's sleeping with Captain Metropolis, who is essentially Captain America of this universe, right? And none of that's confirmed, but Damon Lindelof, the showrunner of Watchmen, goes full ham in these flashbacks when Angela is living life through her grandfather. She's going through the motions. She sees when he becomes a cop and how society treats him. Even though he's a cop, other cops are still racist towards him, because you have to understand, this is around the 1940s, right before the 50s, right before, I mean, not before anything, because black people and black cops are still being treated pretty shitty, but this was in the 1940s. So like when it comes to forensics and all that, none of that was prevalent at that time. So we see how he's treated, and that's when he kind of snaps. When they try to kill him, his own fellow officers, and he's walking, he sees that even as a cop, he can't bring justice to crooked white guys because he's black. So he puts a mask on and he beats the shit out of some criminals. And that's what starts the legacy of the superheroes of the Watchmen universe. The fact that he decides to put a mask on and save these guys, and he becomes the Hooded Justice. And because his wife tells him that they will never accept a black superhero, so he kind of face paints around his eyes. So when they see beneath like the eye holes of the mask, that they see a white person, even though it's like super white, but they'd rather be saved by a hooded white guy than a black guy in a badge, which is not even baffling. It's mind-boggling how just stupid this whole concept of racism is in the first place. So a hooded stranger in a mask who beats the shit out of people is more trustworthy because you think he's white, as opposed to a black cop who actually went and had training and is actually being paid and wants to do right by you guys. But then we start to uncover a very nefarious plot throughout the episode, and we start to see how he dives deeper and deeper into the superhero life and how the Minutemen was started. And then we get to see, even in that aspect, we see that when he joined the cops, right? The whole system was corrupt around him, so he couldn't do anything. But then when he joins the Minutemen and he gets with Captain Metropolis and they start their love affair, which is another thing that threw a huge thing. Like, it's the confirmation that the Hooded Justice was gay is one thing, right? But the fact that it's Angela's grandfather who was married and had a kid and was having this affair with another superhero who claimed to care about him, but when push came to shove and Hooded Justice needed help, grandfather needed help, they weren't there to help him. They were selling merch. They were busy doing photo ops, and they just didn't care because the crimes themselves were mainly focused. The crimes the Hooded Justice was trying to solve were mainly focused on the black community and this vast conspiracy to hypnotize the black community into killing each other, which is, I have to say, like, in the grand scheme of racist piece of shit plans, that plan is actually one that works. It was working, using media to brainwash the masses of black people against one another is something that a lot of people still believe is going on to this day with music, TV, and just the brainwashing of individuals. But in this show, it takes it to the extreme where it's actual physically brainwashing and mesmerizing them. And once the Hooded Justice figures this out and he calls the Minutemen for help, Captain Metropolis is like, nah. I mean, if you want to come to my house and we can have sex, that's cool. But I'm not really here to help you. Which shows, again, a black guy trying to do the right thing. And he says, I'm not here to help the Negro uprising. This is what Captain Metropolis said to Hooded Justice, which is telling that even in the superhero community, throughout American history, or history since this is an alternate universe, throughout history, the corruption that the black man has to face and the black people have to overcome is permeated throughout the entire society. Even the do-gooders have that, and Hooded Justice had to stay hooded because the rest of the Minutemen were not okay with the fact that he was black, even though Captain Metropolis was fine and he was banging him, right? That was cool, but the rest of them couldn't know, and that shows just what the issue was. And this is why this episode is so powerful, because throughout American history, this has been going on, and it shows that it creeps through every crevice. Like, good superhero teams are still racially prejudiced against a black dude, even though he is their inspiration for being a hero. Hooded Justice is the first hero. He is the inspiration to every hero that came after him, but they don't know he's black. And I feel like if they knew he was black, they wouldn't have been inspired, because he would have been just another spook, as they called him, and he was just a wild guy, so they wouldn't have followed and been at all inspired to continue. So he had to be hooded. And then that takes us to 2019 when Angela's going in and out. And we have to sit back and think about it, because what has changed? Hooded Justice is in his mask to fight the KKK and this great plot against the black community back in the 40s, right? And then you have the current events of Watchmen, the series in 2019, where Angela has to become a superhero to fight hooded white men who are terrorizing the black community in 2019. So you have this gap of 1940 something, right? All the way up to 2019. We're talking 70 years, and the same shit is still going on. And that is what is so powerful about this episode. What makes Watchmen really good, the original and this, is the fact that Watchmen itself, the whole idea of Watchmen is to hold the mirror to society. At the time that the 1980, was it 84 or 85? At the time that the comic book came out, right? It was in the boom. It takes place in the twilight of the Cold War, and the whole thing is nuclear war and the doomsday clock and just how society is acting at the time. And it holds a mirror. The comic series, the graphic novel, holds a mirror to society and says, these are your prevailing issues of your time. And now this series in 2019 is holding a mirror to our society, saying, hey, these are your prevailing issues with your society currently, which are the same things that were going on in the 40s, which were the same thing that were going on in the very first episode of this Watchmen in 1921. It's the same thing. It's as though our society is ugly and vicious and nothing has changed. And this episode just reinforces that idea. And having Angela live through her grandfather's memories, and we get to learn more about the Watchmen mythology and just the history of their universe and how that history really hasn't changed in 2019. And wow, just wow. And then just confirming who the Hooded Justice was, and the fact that a black guy was the inspiration to the superhero community, but nobody knew, so no pressure was given to him. Everyone thought he's a white guy, and that's pretty much the history of rock and roll too, right? Like, as if Elvis Presley was the king of rock and roll when Chuck Berry did everything first. It's those type of messages that this episode and this show is giving that I think is really important. And this episode of Watchmen is really strong because of that. And it doubles down on just the message it's trying to get, like, hey, society, this is fucked up and nothing has changed, and we're not changing. And it doesn't look like we're going to change anytime soon, because no matter what people do to try to change, there's always a force to resist, such as the men in the Rorschach mask, such as the KKK, such as the Minutemen superheroes. It's always at the behest of the major society. It's always at the behest of the major society, which is white America, that's pushing the black narrative down. And I know it's a lot of heavy-handed racial connotations and racial tones in the show, but it's true. It's true. Granted, the show could do more to kind of make it more nuanced instead of beating it over our heads. But maybe sometimes what you need is a hammer to beat the message over the head of society. Like, yo, stop doing this shit. This is what it is. But man, this episode really shifted the entirety of the Watchmen universe. And I can't wait to see what next week does. Because now that this is the canon sequel and therefore the canon prequel to the Watchmen universe, there's a lot to unpack here. Anyway, guys, that's episode 6 of Watchmen. A lot of things went down. We learned a lot of things. We see that the message hasn't changed. History is like an endless waltz, always repeating itself. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on this episode. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. What kind of messaging do you think, and how did it resonate with you more specifically? I'd love to hear that in the comment section below. Anyway, guys, until next time, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you guys have not already. And until next time, binge on.